Namaste. Let us resume our studies of the Bhagavad Gita. Today we will discuss the laws of detachment. So we already studied that detachment is of the will and not of action. Actions can go on, but if the will is detached from personal gain, that very action becomes karma yoga. Now, what are the laws behind this? How does it work? There is this very beautiful shloka in the Bhagavad Gita. Tasmat asakta satatam karyam karma samachara asakto hyacharan karma paramapnoti purushaha. Remain detached and yet perform action. And through such action, you will reach paramapnoti. You will reach the highest. So then what are the laws behind this detached action? This is used in so many ways. We keep talking of this, but what exactly is the mental state and how does it happen? How does Karma Yoga lead to this ultimate purification? You must remember this, whenever we perform an action, behind it there is a will. Somehow the will is oriented in one particular direction. According to that, our action proceeds. Now, the source of this will is the Vijnanmay Kosh. In your own personality structure, we have already many times studied the Panchakosha model. You are, as it were, enshrouded by 5 sheaths. The outermost is the Annamay Kosh, the body. So the body is just the crust of your personality. And then, after that is the Pranmay Kosh, the vital energy sheath. That is the second aspect of your personality, the external aspect. Beyond this is the Manomay Kosh, the mind. So essentially, you are the mind. Most people do not disidentify from the mind. That is their understanding of themselves. And the fourth kosha is the Vijnanmay Kosh, which is the higher intelligence. And the fifth kosha is the Anandmay Kosh, which is the causal sheath. So these are the 5 sheaths over the Atman. And as a result, this forms your personality structure, as it were. Now, from where does the will arise? The will is a compound between the higher intelligence and the self. So, at the borderline between the Vijnanmay Kosh and Anandmay Kosh, and Anandmay Kosh is very subtle, very, very subtle. So, almost at the point of consciousness, this is where the will arises. You can say Vijnanmay Kosh is involved in it. So, please remember, whenever you will something, and as a result perform that action, you are keeping the Vijnanmay Kosh and the Anandmay Kosh active. Consciousness is deeply involved. In fact, involved, what I mean to say is it lights up the higher intelligence and makes you will something. So when you keep these levels of your own personality active, you are living close to the source. That is how when you will rightly, it ushers you naturally into the knowledge of the self. In fact, in Indian philosophy, the will is considered the dynamic aspect of the self. Just like consciousness is the static aspect, it is your real nature. The will, since it arises at the borderline between the intelligence and consciousness, it is considered the dynamic aspect of the self. So you are verily your will. Ata kratumaya purusho. It is there in the Upanishads, which means a person is verily what his will is. So if this will is trained to perform detached from the body-mind complex, which means to say not for personal gain, not in the direction of a personal benefit, then that will itself will free you. Your very act of conation, your very act of volition will free you. So this is the meaning. The orientation of the will is only towards the good of others, towards public good, towards social good, and not towards a personal gain. Such an action will free you automatically. So the principles of detachment, then let us summarize. The very first principle of detachment is the law says your urge towards action is natural, either physical or mental, because that is the nature of vital energy. It cannot remain the same. It keeps changing. It keeps moving. It is movement is the characteristic of energy. But the only choice you have is whether you will perform it as detached akama karma, the action, or as attached sakama karma. Whether you will perform it as detached action where there is a totally depersonalized will, or as a deeply personalized attached action. This choice you have with your vital energy, how you use it. The second principle of karma, you see, the law of conservation of energy also says energy cannot be created nor destroyed, but it can be transformed from one form into another, isn't it? So something similar here. The second law of detachment says detachment being of the will and not of action. If you keep exercising your will in the right direction, detachment will naturally grow. And detachment, more powerful a way of helping your detachment grow is to get knowledge of the reality of who you are rather than merely exercising your will blindly. So you see, it is not about being adamant or obsessive about something. It is about shifting the focus of your will because you know the real nature of your being. That is why knowledge and action are both very close. Don't think they are watertight compartments. Knowledge affects action, action affects knowledge. So the detachment of your will is based on very solid grounds of knowledge because the very nature of your being is the Atman. A personalized will doesn't befit you. Personalized in the sense a body-mind based will and hence action, that does not befit you. This is the second law of detachment. So detachment of will from selfish gains is only natural. It is the natural way your will is supposed to function. In fact, personalizing will is unnatural. But you see this world, that is why it is called Maya. It is functioning along personalized wills alone. That is why the amount of selfishness, exploitation, crime, we are even exploiting Mother Nature to such an extent as if we are the last generation on the planet. How can we be so insensitive? Because the will has not oriented itself towards reality. So you see, this is the second important law of detachment, that your detachment of the will comes from knowledge of reality rather than merely fixing the will in a particular direction and exercising it. So knowledge of reality, knowledge goes hand in hand with the actual performance of Karma Yoga. In fact, that is why the next thing which comes in the Bhagavad Gita also is the types of knowledge and how knowledge liberates and how knowledge is the end of all karma. All Karma Yoga culminates in the highest knowledge. The third law of detachment says detachment does not at all mean irresponsible action. Just because the will is detached, somehow I complete the action and then, I do what I like. This is not called detachment. This is just insensitivity to duty consciousness. Detachment means responsible action because you have understood the nature and the purpose of your own soul. So naturally and consciously, deliberately, willfully, you are detached. So it is action with responsibility, but without attribution of the fruit to oneself. This comes by a deep understanding of one's real identity. Again, I'm telling you, knowledge is like the background track for all selfless actions. Then the fourth law of detachment is detachment naturally will make the mind calm and stress-free. It is only attached action when you are so much thinking of the consequences of your action and what you will get out of it that the mind remains in a jaded state and the action is affected as a result. If you are writing of an examination only thinking of what will happen as a result of your success in the examination or of your failure in the examination, you will not be able to recollect the facts and come out successfully. So the mind has to be in a very calm state, and for that detachment is essential. Whatever you are doing, complete focus on that and leaving out everything else. See, actually speaking, this is the natural state of your mind. It is meant to remain focused. The cognitive capacity of the human brain is such, because we are the acme of evolution, that it can stand at one point. It can stand still. But we distract it because we don't grasp these essential principles of life. So remain focused and keep the mind calm, composed, and you will see detachment is only natural. Suppose in any kind of action, whether it is an examination you're writing, an assignment you're giving, a game you are playing, if you're only thinking of the consequences, the mind will become restless. When you stop that thought of the future or the past and rivet yourself in the present, that is when the action reaches perfection. So frenzied work, restless work is not called dynamism. Please understand, these are all the mistakes we make in trying to understand karma, the nature of work. Only the calm and control can truly work. And the type of work you do will not matter. The intention, the motive behind the work is all that matters. These are all the essential laws and principles of detachment. If you work like this, you will enjoy the experience of life immensely. If you are only fixed or riveted to a particular cause and consequence without paying attention to the action in hand, you will lose the beauty of life. And if that your will is oriented personally only stupidly towards our own whatever gains, our attachments, if it is only oriented towards that, then life is one big misery which you will all constantly want to fly away from. There is this beautiful story by Anthony de Mello on the sheer beauty of detachment. He speaks of a group of tourists who were traveling in a bus. Now it was a huge tourist bus, a very gala affair, and with huge windows so that they could see the beautiful countryside. They were passing through the heart of Europe, so they could see the very, very magnificent mountains and lakes, the streams, the forests. So there were huge windows. But when this group of tourists entered the bus, the shades were put for the windows. All they had to do was sit in their places and remove the shades. But then they got into a squabble while sitting. And the bus started moving, but still their argument went on that who should have been given the special seats, who should have been more honored, and whose place is first, whose place is second. All this squabble was going on, and they passed through the entire journey that way, completely ignoring the beautiful sights around them. The shades were still on, and they had not removed the shades, so they could not see the beautiful sights outside the windows, because they were so enmeshed with their own egos, with their silly minds, with their silly thought currents, with their personalized will and attitudes. So you will miss the beauty of life without detachment. You must open the shades and detach your will from the silly ego and its workings, and then you will see the beauty of life. So detachment is the key to experiencing life fully. And without that, you remain trapped in the silliness of your mind. And in the, I don't want to go into all that negativity, but it is an actual trap. It is the trap of Maya, to remain enmeshed in conditioned thought, which has not learned to rise, which is based only on the ego. To live that kind of a life it's really pathetic. So detachment is the sheer beauty of life. In any act, in any relationship, in anything that you think or do, if there is the spirit of detachment, you will at once jump into the larger picture. You will not remain enmeshed with any kind of conditioned element there. And that is the way to experience the joy of life. So examples for this you can see in your own life. Whenever you have been in misery, it is due to attachment. Whenever you have been in joy, it is due to detachment. Check this out and see. So that is why the principal message of the Bhagavad Gita, Swakarmana tam abhyarcha siddhim vindati manava. Detached action is the way to the highest in human life. Let us grasp this in the first person, and we would have grasped the message of the Bhagavad Gita. I would just like to also point out what Vivekananda says on all this, to give you a better grasp of the subject. He says, the older I grow, the more everything seems to me to lie in manliness. This is my new gospel. Manliness itself means the ability to remain detached and objective. Take your decisions based on your detachment, not on your attachments. Then he says, we are responsible for what we are, and whatever we wish ourselves to be, we have the power to make ourselves. If what we are now has been the result of our own past actions, it certainly follows that whatever we wish to be in the future can be produced by our present actions. So we have to know how to act. Elsewhere he says, nothing makes us work so well at our best and highest when all responsibility is thrown upon ourselves. When we will have nobody to grope towards, no devil to lay our blame upon, no personal God to carry our burdens, when we are alone responsible, then we shall rise to our highest and best. So you see, the onus is all upon you. How you train your equipment to perform detached action, that will decide the course of your life. We will end this video here. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.